أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Surah AlHujaraat, ayah number 2. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says,
يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي ولا تجهروا له بالقول كجهر بعضكم لبعض أن تحبط أعمالكم وأنتم لا تشعرون إن الذين يغضون أصواتهم عند رسول الله أولئك الذين امتحن الله قلوبهم للتقوى لهم مغفرة وأجر عظيم.
There was an occasion where Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu and Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, they had a bit of a disagreement, and they were raising their voices to have their opinions heard, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was there in their presence. This ayah was revealed at that time. This is one of the mentioned asbab al-nuzul. O you who believe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to either these two specific Sahaba, or we'll get to a modern day practical application to, we hope to be us. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, O you who believe. La tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawti an-nabi. Do not raise your voice over the voice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَلَا تَجْهَرُوا لَهُ بِالْقَوْلِ كَجَهْرِ بَعْضِكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ. That don't treat the Prophet sallallahu, don't call out the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the way you call out to one another. It's okay to joke with each other. It's okay to have inside comments with one another. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is of a higher standard. Salawatullahu salamun alayhi. For the risk of أن تحبط أعمالكم وأنتم لا تشعرون. That perhaps you might diminish your deeds without even realizing it. And the verse that comes before it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring again to the believers that don't make decisions before consulting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the recipient of wahi, from the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything you need to know, any decisions you need to make, it's there in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, the ulama mention that, well, what about after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's demise? Do these ayat still have a ruling upon us? How am I going to raise my voice in front of the Prophet when salawatullahu salamun alayhi, he has passed away from this world? The ulama mention that yes, it continues to apply in a few scenarios. One, when visiting the holy tomb of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to not raise your voice in that area. Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu was keen and strict on this. I was just there a couple of weeks ago. I can tell you many of our ummah probably need a refresher course on this verse. It's a holy space. It's the resting place of our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Humble yourself. That's one. Two, it's also mentioned in front of the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in front of his words. When a gathering is, right, we open up Riyadh al-Salihin and we're reading the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, any collection, whenever the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are mentioned, la tajharu bil qawli, don't call out to one another, don't joke with these words, don't tarfa'u aswatakum, don't start talking over the person that is reciting the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Don't make decisions of your own whims when the clear statement of the Prophet ﷺ is there. This is our application to these ayat. There's always a context for its revelation, but then subhanAllah, there is an applicability to it outside of that context. Is the Prophet ﷺ in our midst right now? No. It's a matter of aqeedah for us to believe that. There are some that do. He's not. But his words persist. Right? The collections of his ahadith persist. So we respect and we regard those words as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is there. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How can we connect ourselves to these ahadith? How can we show our respect and our admiration for the Nabi that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose, sallallahu alayhi wasallam? It begins first and foremost, I would say, with whenever the name Muhammad is mentioned, you say, alayhi wasallam. At least once in a gathering is recommended, but there's no limit, right? If the name is mentioned 100 times, you can say it 100 times. And this is meaningful and beneficial for the one who says the salawat and salam. Whoever sends salawat and salam upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends numbers of blessings upon each and every one of you. And so we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the ability to admire and to respect and to hold in high regard the Prophet, his words, his actions, the collections of his hikam, his teachings, and that these are never separated in our lives from the ahkam of the Quran, but rather we believe that they are one and the same. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness for any jahala, for any ignorance we may have committed that may have harmed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or harmed those teaching the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.